Good afternoon, everybody. How are you doing? I'm Latvian Grandmaster to Neiksans. Those of you who know me, yeah, I guess I don't have to introduce myself, but those of you who don't know it, one of the leading Latvian chess grandmasters. And today I'm back with another boot camp. So, what is a boot camp? So boot camps usually are educational streams from time to time, something like once 2 weeks or once 3 weeks. I try to do something educational. Um, yeah, hello, John. Yeah, seems your subscription did go through. So my previous bootcamp was about converting material advantage, and this topic is very obvious because as probably some of you know is that Evgeny Sveshnikov passed away 9 days ago at August 18. And yeah, so I thought I need to make a little tribute. I mean, of course, I won't claim that I knew him really so well. I mean, we were colleagues in at the national level here in Latvia. We played numerous times for the national team. We played together so many times. So I thought I want to do a special stream. And why not do it as a boot camp? So today, what I want to do, I want to show maybe some of the best games that Evgeny Sveshnikov has played before in his career, his contribution to the opening theory, and works as an author. Right, so maybe I'll start with the first one. So as you can see, this is Sveshnikov throughout his life. Yeah, so he passed away on August 18th. Thanks, Kiki, for your sub. And yeah, so it was really he was really an amazing personality, and also he was a great author, and I have to show this as well. I'm not sure if you really have followed it so much, but he has published quite a lot of books, and actually those are the books I found only on Amazon. I'm pretty sure there's so many books published in Russian language, and I think at least I understand that Evgeny Sveshnikov, he was trying to develop his own theory, his own approach. So of course there's the Sveshnikov version, actually that is a separate discussion, but he had his own understanding how you should be playing the opening theory. For example, he was advertising quite heavily the French advanced variation. So it's e4, e6, d4, d5, e5. As you can see, he has written at least 3 books. Probably there are more. I mean, these are the books which I was able to find on Amazon. Then obviously he is also a big expert when it comes to the Sicilian Alapin. And actually, I'm quite surprised that the Sicilian Alapin is still not dubbed as some sort of a Sveshnikov line, because he was one of the biggest promoters of the line. And as you can see, he has written at least one book. I think there were more. Not sure what is this book about the anti-Sicilians. Probably some kind of. Oh no, it's for black. Right? It's for black. But Sicilian Alapin was one of his main weapons to combat the Sicilian. And what is quite interesting is that his first book, I believe so, somebody please correct me if I'm wrong, his first book, which he published in 1988, 89, I'm not sure which was the correct year, it was called The Sicilian Pelican. So those of you who don't know, the Sicilian variation e4, c5, knight f3, knight c6, the knight f6, e5, all of you know, it's dubbed as Sicilian Sveshnikov, right? And we are gonna touch this topic throughout the bootcamp, but prior to that, it was called as the Sicilian Pelican or the Lasker Pelican, because most notably it was played by the second world champion Emanuel Lasker back in something like 1910. Okay, obviously the theory was quite at a ridiculous level, but somehow throughout the years it took a name of Sicilian Pelican. And Evgeny Sveshnikov, he had done very extensive research on the topic together with his friend Gennady Timoshenko. And he published a book and titled it The Sicilian Pelican. Quite interesting, right? So when he published it, he didn't even use the title of Sicilian Sveshnikov, although the line already was dubbed as the Sveshnikov after a famous game against Yefim Geller some years before. So as you can see, he was indeed a modest person. And yeah, somehow throughout the years, the name of Sicilian Sveshnikov just became very natural. All right, so I guess I'll start with some games. So I would like to show you some of his games. Most notably his best games, some of his most notable games he has played in both the advanced variation of the French or the Sicilian Alapin, and also I have some games I played against him myself, and those games I also would like to show to you as well. Hello everybody, by the way, who has joined us here. So I'll start with one of the probably nicest games played by Evgeny Sveshnikov. Hello everybody, hello. This game was played between Evgeny Sveshnikov against Ruslan Sherbakov, and I believe the year it was, let me find it, 1991. Yeah, a long time ago. So yeah, it's quite interesting is that Sveshnikov himself, I had numerous discussions with him about this approach, and he believed himself that the best way to combat knight c6 is to play the Rossolimo. And he told me this a couple of times at least, that he thought that d4, black is doing so much fine. So after bishop e5, this is what Sveshnikov himself was playing against knight c6, e6, short castle, knight g7, and c3. And if my memory is correct, I think I played a setup against Sveshnikov himself with the white color number of times. I would have to find those games. Usually I think there were some rapid games, some blitz games, because we played again so many times against each other. So white is typically willing to play d4, and this is a very common approach for white. I mean, black is trying to advance at the queen side, white is threatening to push at the center and create a strong center of the pawns, so d5, e5. Now white is threatening to play d4, and what I really find quite amazing is that this would actually suit Sveshnikov's approach, because he was also, remember, he was also playing the French advanced variation, because if now he would be able to play d4, he would essentially get something he really knows well how to play. So that's why his opponent played d4 to disconnect the pawns on e5 protection. Now the game got really sharp, so I'm just gonna fast forward this. Knight a3, so white is trying to get to the pawn on b5. Knight a7, couldn't really tell if this is a good move or not. But the point is, black is behind in development. So queen b3, threatening with some ideas like, I guess something like knight c4, knight e6 maybe, at some point. So after knight x on d4, bishop a3 takes, knight e5 was played, and although black is doing structurally pretty much okay, his king is weak, and his bishop on b2 is gonna become a monstrous bishop. So knight c4 was played, queen g3, very nice idea, attacking the pawn on g7, and now for example after knight x on b2, queen g7, rook f8, there's a little cute tactic, knight takes on e6. So black cannot take on e6 because after f takes, the queen on b7 is under attack, plus knight f8 or queen f8, and the knight on b2 is also under attack, so black simply loses. Very, very nice, this move, queen g3. So short castle was played. Bishop c3, white kept the bishop alive, and now after g6, d3, knight b6, queen e5 was played, and probably you have seen this position before, I imagine. So here, black played knight e7. Now the question is, do you see? I've seen this combination many, many times, really. So black's idea is to push away the queen and play something like e5, f6. And this is probably one of the nicest moments in Sveshnikov's career because he was able to sacrifice a queen. Queen g7 check. And this is a very lovely motive. So the idea is that after king takes on g7, there's going to be discovered check, but it's not only discovered check, it's a mate. So something like king g8, I'm not sure if it's knight e7 or knight h6, choose whatever you like more. And actually after queen g7 check, the opponent resigned. Yeah, so that was really, really a great game by Sveshnikov. Of course, black shouldn't have blundered the checkmate like that, but I mean, you have to admit, right, it's very, very beautiful, queen g7. Usually this motive is accomplished by taking the bishop on g7, not just sacrifice the queen just like that. Queen h8 doesn't really work, because queen h8 takes, there's no double check. Or any other knight retreat, there's always defense. It's not very hard tactic, Mamlu. It's not. I agree, but it's pretty, right? It's very pretty. So that is one of the most famous combinations by Sveshnikov. Not really mind-boggling. Of course, you can compare maybe with Mikhail Tal, but it's very beautiful anyway. Right. Now I want to show the next game, which also is going to be very pretty. And the next game he played was against Igor Ivanov. So he played this game in 1976. So Sveshnikov, he became a grandmaster pretty quickly. He was studying, almost got his PhD. What was this? Researching combustion, etc. I'm not sure how to even translate it properly. But he was working as an engineer, and then he quit it and became a chess professional. He got his EM and GM title rather quick. So this is his game in 1976. I believe he already was a grandmaster, I think so, or at least very close. I don't remember which exact year he got his GM title. So he was born in 1950, so this would make him age 26 at the time. Yeah, and c4, of course, c4. So Sveshnikov was a big fan of the isolated queen pawn structures. And this is one of the ways how you can try to get it. So for example, another way, which we are going to touch the subject, for example, if his opponents would play c5, c3, d5, takes, and the question is, at some point, white is going to play d4, takes, and this is a very thematic topic. So white creates an isolated queen pawn structure and is about to use a lot of tempos to target it, target the queen. Thank you, Delp. Appreciate that. And by the way, I want to mention is that I have bootcamps about the isolated queen pawn structure as well. So I don't remember the number. You can check my YouTube channel. Yeah, I did it, how to play for the isolated queen pawn structure and against it. So for Sveshnikov, this was one of the central topics he would like to employ. And anyway, so in this game, thanks Del for your sub, appreciate that. So here in this game, he played c4, and the modern theory, I believe right now, is that it's not really dangerous. Right, at least I think so. It's considered not to be dangerous, and I think the reason is this line. Knight f6, knight f3, knight c6, knight c3, and bishop g4. Yeah, I think so. But okay, I mean, theory's moving on. And at the time, maybe that wasn't really so obvious. So those of you who have studied this, I'm talking about this line. C takes knight e5, queen b3. There are probably ways how to avoid it. But this has been well already researched. But anyway, so he played c4, his opponent played e6, knight c3, knight f6, knight f3 takes, bishop c4, and there you go. We have a very classic isolated queen's pawn structure. So bishop e7, castle, castle, rook e1, all of these moves make a lot of sense. Bishop f4, b6, d5. Yeah, about d5, it's very interesting. This is again one of the common ideas of the isolated queen's pawn structure at the right moment to play d5. But the funny stuff started here. After knight a5. By the way, this is still funny. White probably could have played something like bishop b3 and sacrificed the pawn on d5. Sveshnikov sacrificed the pawn like this. He played e6, took on e7, and played queen e2. And suddenly it's not so easy for black to bring the pieces together and defend against incoming threats. So White's plan is simple. Either to threaten the knight to take it, something like rook d1, b3, bishop d6. And although black looks super solid, he has some problems here. So he played knight e6, rook d1, rook d8, queen d3, knight b7. All of this makes perfect sense, otherwise the knight on d6 is under attack, and knight e4. And again, there's some knight c6 threats. Might be some knight f5 threats at some point. Not really easy to defend, so queen c5 was played by black, and about here Sveshnikov misplayed it. But this allowed him to play a really beautiful game. So he played bishop e5, knight g4, bishop g3, e5, and b4, some crazy counterattack. Clearly, hinting with queen takes on d4, he had an idea to play queen f3 and threaten to take on d8 and threaten to take the rook on a8. Although the engine says this is not good for white at all, but still, from afar, maybe it's not really so easy for black to navigate all of this. So he took on b4, didn't take the knight on d4. Takes, this was played in the game, bishop e6, queen g3, and now white has a very serious compensation. So black played knight c5, knight c6, take, take, and just check out this combination. So queen b2 was played, bishop d4, and white is about to launch something serious at the king side. So bishop is removed so that white can play h3. And the extra pawn for black at the moment doesn't really matter. So knight e7, h3 here, and now follows a very nice attack. Knight e5, all of white's pieces are attacking the king. Queen c2, take on f6, and sacrifice the exchange. Now that is really, really great. So black has to take it. The mate on g7 is threatening, so g6, and queen f4. And apparently black has nothing to show against queen h6, queen g7, so black tried to hold this with queen h5. Bishop d4, now this is a threat, and queen g7 or queen h8 mate. King f8 was played, check, here. Now, and this is a very typical smothered mate. Probably you've seen something like this before, right? Maybe not from this order of the moves. So knight e7, knight g6 double check, and yeah, check. So after rook f8, knight e7, mate. So this is one of the again most amazing games by Sveshnikov, and he was usually very practical, trying to play super solid chess. Sometimes it was a bit fireworks, but not really in the style of Mikhail Tal. He was overall a very strong positional player, and sometimes employing ideas like these. All right, let me show what is next here. And now this is quite a famous game, I believe. Let me check it. Yeah, this was actually quite something. I don't remember with which game it started. Maybe it started with this game, because this is year 1967. Probably it started with this game. So Sveshnikov was playing against Andras Adrian, who was a very strong Hungarian grandmaster. I believe he was in the World Championship cycle, fighting at least in the candidates level. And in this game, Sveshnikov was only, I think, 17 years old, because this game is played in 1967, and he was only 17 years old. And at the time, he had worked out his own very system. c5, knight f3, knight c6, d4, knight f6, and now knight c3, e5. And at the time, this was considered to be a silly opening. This was a silly opening, and some years later, even Tigran Petrosian, already at the time former world champion, he said, "What is this? You couldn't play like that." And if some of the best players in the world, cannot deal with this guy playing this ridiculous opening, I'm gonna have to switch to playing e4 myself. So this is what Petrosian, according to some interviews, he said it himself. He never called the word, but he didn't switch to e4. And I think it was after the next game against Yefim Geller, where Geller said, "I'm simply unable to find an advantage for white." He said, "This is a ridiculous looking move, but I just cannot find an advantage for white." Either way, they played this game in 1967 against Adrian, and yeah, at the time this was ridiculous. This is complete nonsense. You're not supposed to play like this. You're not supposed to weaken the square on d5. Yeah, sure, now theory says this is a very nice continuation. And of course, at the time it was dubbed as the Pelican Sicilian. So here d6, bishop g5, here's the main white's idea. White wants to play knight e5, create some forked threats. a6, knight a3, b5. So black is threatening to play b4. Yeah, bishop takes on f6 is not really mandatory. So the main move here is knight e5. Bishop e7, let's say takes, and so black typically plays something like bishop g5, short castle, g6 and f5, and sometimes even sacrifices the opponent on the queen side in order to gain some time. But here Adrian played bishop f6, knight e5, and c4. And guess what? And guess what Sveshnikov did here? And this is actually maybe which caught attention to the players, because I mean c4 appears to be a big positional threat, right? So you don't want to take on c4, because there's going to be bishop c4 or maybe even knight c4, knight b6, and if white will somehow manage to trade this light square bishop, black will simply be left with a glaring hole at d5, and black has a terrible dark square bishop. The same applies for b4. By the way, b4 either queen a4 right away attacking the knight on c6, or knight b4, queen a4, or even knight c2. This looks risky. And check what Sveshnikov at age 17 played here. He played knight e7. Just played knight e7, sacrificing pawn on b5. Today, this is standard. Stuff like this, sacrificing the pawn on b5. Nobody's surprised by this. So again, the idea here is that, let's say after something like, I don't know, let's say c takes on b5, takes, I guess bishop e6, queen d2. I can only guess what was his idea, I guess something like bishop e7, takes, short castle, bishop e2, and e5. Something like this, along the lines of this. So black sacrifices a couple of pawns, 1 or 2 pawns to the queen side, then gets a very powerful game in the center, 2 bishops, and those pawns at the queen side are supposed to fall. It's supposed to fall, I don't really know. So that was the idea. And clearly his opponent, Adriano, was impressed. He was impressed by the move. So he played bishop e2 instead. And now after knight e5, c takes, g6, black simply got an excellent game. So the game proceeded like this. Bishop h6, not a traditional bishop g7, because the bishop would be staring at the pawn on e5. Castle, castle, and f5. And black is just enjoying the position too much, right? There's a free attack at the king side. So f3, bishop d7, queen c7. So black's plan is very straightforward. Organize something at the king side, and at some point black simply took over. Simply took over because the attack at the king side is looking very serious, and white already had to sacrifice an exchange in order to keep the things under control. But black did not take it and instead went after the white game. So really impressive game by Sveshnikov, and this idea of sacrificing the pawn on b5 would become as a very typical idea in the Sveshnikov. So essentially he invented all of these ideas. All right. Let me maybe show you another game. And this time I'm going to show you a classical Sicilian Sveshnikov, which was played by Sveshnikov. So here's this game against Yefim Geller in 1978. Yeah, 1978. I believe this was the game when Petrosian was throwing his jokes that he should switch to playing e4. Knight c6, knight f6, e5 again. Knight b5 has to be played, sort of. Bishop g5, a6, b5. And now after knight e5, bishop e7, here we go. Now this is, of course, one of the main ideas for white. So white gets a very nice outpost on d5, and this is why it was really ridiculed by some of the best players at the time. It's just black has nothing to show for this weakness on d5. At least they thought so. So after c3, a short castle, knight c2, bishop g5, a4, takes, a5. This was Sveshnikov's idea, so that he can always play at some points rook b8, become very active, and just threaten to play at some moment g6, f5. So white played bishop c4, rook b8, and by the way, Yefim Geller, he was one of the best in the world. So clearly among the very best. So Sveshnikov was playing his bet line against the leading theoreticians at the time, and they were just unable to prove anything. So after rook b8, b3, king h8, and instead of preparing the threat of f5 g6, here Sveshnikov played f5 right away. Take, bishop takes on f5. Now black is very active, and one of the common ideas for the Sicilian Sveshnikov is to play e4 and knight e5 at some point and organize something at the king side. So queen e2 was played, queen d7, knight e3, bishop e6, and bishop d8. Very odd idea. So the bishop is rerouted to d8 to protect the pawn on a5, so that the knight can join action at the king side. So this is again something which is very unusual for traditional Sicilians, and that's why it was so difficult for white, at least at the time, to understand how to play against it. So rook a2, queen f7, queen d3, here, and e4. And suddenly black starts to organize a serious counterattack. So queen e4 is impossible because of queen d1. And the queen goes away, and there you go. Bishop h4. And knight e5. Now knight g4, queen h2 is a huge problem. So black is simply taking over the game here. So Geller had to play knight f4. And now sacrifice. And knight f3. Quite incredible, right? So what is about to get mated? Geller is just about to be slaughtered by playing very good chess so far. Yep. So he had to take. Now e takes on f3 would be a mistake, right? Because there would be bishop takes on e6, and there's no follow-up for black because the bishop defends the h3 square. There's no queen g6, there's no queen g5, there's no move. So Sveshnikov's idea was first to play knight f3 and only then take on c4. So here, queen takes on e4 was played, bishop b3, now that's a double attack, and Geller was defending this already for quite some time, and he simply lost control of the game. He played rook b1, rook e8, super sharp game, made another intermezzo move, rook takes on a5. Seemingly, again, white is doing just fine because queen a5 is going to be queen e8, and rook e4 is going to be rook h5. Sveshnikov made another intermezzo move d5, and this is where Geller lost it. He played rook e1, which looks nice. Which looks nice, really, because after d takes on e4, there's going to be rook takes on h5. But what he missed is queen g6 check. So that's it. So the point is, black is threatened to take the queen, and after queen g6, there's intermezzo check. And just like that, black is up a piece. So the game was played really at the highest level up to this moment, and white would have to pick up already not really obvious defense. Okay, I guess this was still playable. Queen e8, and rook takes on b3. And this should somehow end with the perpetual check. I don't think really black is in any danger here because the white king is so exposed. But anyway, I mean, he kept applying this pressure by playing really great attacking chess. Again, check out how this initiative started. Queen h5, e4, bishop h4, bishop g3, knight e5, boom, boom. And yeah, so his opponent simply lost the control. Really a stunning game. Now, another game maybe of the Sveshnikov line. I can show you this one. So this game was played against Vitaly Tseshkovsky in the year of 1974. Slightly before the game against Yefim Geller. Knight c3, knight f6. Yeah, and there we go, we again had the same position. e5, d6, here, and here. And of course, at some point it became a big question. Can white take on f6 right away? Because this is what Adrian already played against Sveshnikov some years ago. When Sveshnikov was only 17, he took an f6. And remember probably this game, right? So queen f6, knight e5, queen d8, and I guess c4 anyway. So I assume they simply found some improvement for white, that after knight e7 you can't take the pawn on b5 after all. So after bishop takes on f6, Sveshnikov invented another idea here. He took g takes on f6. So I can only imagine Petrosian's reaction to this, right? He would see something like, oh my goodness, how can you play like this? This is complete nonsense. I mean, there's all of the white squares are so weak. Not a single pawn structure for black makes any sense whatsoever. But after knight e5, f5, black is very active. If black will manage to destroy a white center and play, let's say at some point, f takes, short castle, f5, e4, black is simply better. Just like that. So bishop to e3 was played, bishop e6. Now the pawn on f5 cannot be taken because the pawn, knight on d5 is under attack. Queen h5 makes a lot of sense. So again, white's idea is to invite to take on e4, bishop e4, maybe some knight e3, and dominate the weaknesses of the light squares. And strategically wise, it looks awful. It looks awful. But the point is, black simply ignores it. He plays bishop g7, because the pawn still cannot be taken, because the knight on d5 is under attack, c3, and short castle. Just like that. And black's idea is to take on e4 and play f5. So let's say white plays something like short castle, boom, boom, and here. Just like that, white already is on the defensive. So let's say the bishop goes somewhere here, and e4. Everything is under attack. Knight e4, bishop f7, and white is done. Just like that. With very aggressive game, white is done. Black wins a piece. So now you can understand why Czechkovsky, he played g4. Quite an amazing move. And they played this in the 70s. In the 70s, people, 50 years ago. They had no access to the engines. They were just ideas. This was still a new theory. After g4, f takes, knight c2, Sveshnikov played f5 anyway. So he played very aggressive. And after king h8, rook g8, black is super active. If he was able to take down his opponent. So a5, queen d7, very typical maneuvers for black. I'm just simply gonna fast forward. There's some mutual mistakes at some point. Maybe this the further continuation of the game is not really so important, but again, I want to show you this amazing idea at start that black voluntarily takes on f6 to play f5, to play bishop e6, and by doing this, challenge the center. Now, another typical line in this variation was against Vladimir Tokmakov. Against Sveshnikov played with black. This was year 1975. Same idea. At the time, everybody already sort of knew, okay, this is the crazy guy playing this weird system, the Sicilian Pelican, and we just cannot prove where's this advantage for white. Again b5, bishop f6, again g takes. This we just saw, bishop e6, queen h5, bishop g7, c3, short castle. Now here white decided to try e takes on f5, and this looks really great. Because after bishop d5 there's f6, and suddenly white is threatening with a mate. Now, how is black supposed to play here? e4. Again, a very typical maneuver for the Sicilian Sveshnikov. Closing the bishop. And after f takes on g7, don't take the pawn but play rook e8. And the pawn on g7 actually defends the black king. Yeah, I believe this is theory, because Sveshnikov invented it. So after bishop e2, rook e5, rook g5, and somehow, again, we have some kind of a weird position, which ended up with about equaling it. Just like that. Yeah, just like that. I believe already at some point black managed to snatch away the pawn for white, but all of this starts with some oddity. And you know, I can absolutely relate to this because I've played all my life. I played all my life the Sicilian, not the Sicilian, but Dutch Leningrad. And what makes Dutch Leningrad really special is that it feels unique because it has different positions, different dynamics, which just doesn't compute for most of the positions, for most of the players, because it feels so surreal, unorthodox that you cannot solve those problems with a very standard approach. And I think also the Sicilian Sveshnikov applies in this category because it's weird. It looks weird. You just start to play for those weaknesses, and black has so many resources. All right. Now maybe I can show you. This game of how, for example, Boris Gelfand was playing against Evgeny Sveshnikov. So Boris Gelfand, of course, he is a very famous player, former World Championship challenger against Vishy Anand. And they played this game in, let me say which year, 1995. Yeah, and like I already said before, Sveshnikov himself believed that the Rossolino system is the best way to combat his setup. And after e6, knight e7, again, I think we saw something like this in one of the previous games before. So after e takes, queen takes on d5, rook e1, bishop d7, black is about to challenge white's center with something like knight f5 at some point, or maybe a6. So knight a3 was played, knight g6, bishop f1, here takes, and we get again some kind of a Alapin position. Knight c7 is threatened with a fork, take, and about this position, yeah, about the Alapin, that's of course something I'm gonna mention. About this position I want to mention is that white is sort of slightly ahead in development, but the black has the potential to organize a pawn majority at the king side, and this is exactly what happened in the game. So queen a5, short castle, and e5. And just like that, black is doing very much fine. So he managed to trade away the bishops, and he is ready to play at some point f5, e4, knight e5, and simply enjoy a great position. So he won actually this game against Gelfand. I played against Sveshnikov many times, bishop b5 setup himself, and the only time I played myself against him, no wait, it wasn't the only time. I did play a couple of times, but a long time ago. I would never get anything out of the position, not really a surprise. Would I play b takes on c6? Oh, you mean here, Plutro? You mean bishop takes on c6? Yeah, of course, b takes on c6. Yeah, I think so. You have to play it. There's d takes on c6 is a positional mistake. So, after years, what? Bishop c6. Oh, I don't know, it's not really that relevant. But what I want to mention is that after years of research, after many games, the Sveshnikov system, it got named after Sveshnikov, and probably you know it bears another title, which is the Chelyabinsk variation, and at least one interview conducted with Sveshnikov himself, he said that since he invented this system with his friend in the 60s, they were so young that it would be really weird to title the system as the Sveshnikov system. So that's why it got titled as the Chelyabinsk system, because he comes from Chelyabinsk. And yeah, but of course, I think it's quite interesting actually that in the English community, it's widely regarded as the Sveshnikov system. In the Russian community, the most popular name is Chelyabinsk. But it's still the same. It's still the same. The same authors and same contributors, because Sveshnikov comes from the Chelyabinsk. All right. And nowadays, of course, everybody, yeah, of course, Gennady Timoshenko. Yeah, Gennady Timoshenko. He worked with with his friend together. He was his friend, and I think he also came from Chelyabinsk, so that's why it got titled as the Chelyabinsk system. And nowadays, all of the, not all of the, but many of the best players in the world, they play the system, right? So you probably have seen how far it was advanced. I mean, in 2018 World Championship match, Magnus Carlsen played this against Fabi Caruana. So this was probably quite a surprise for the challenger. And after e5, Carlsen has played it in practice many times. So again, this idea of knight b5, d6, bishop g5, all of this. Carlsen probably is one of the currently leading experts in the world who plays this line. And that's why Fabi was trying to find something after knight e5. Or maybe he played before the World Championship. I don't remember, to be honest. Just mentioned as an example. So Fabi was employing this idea of knight e5, with some ideas to play either c4 or a4, a5. So the position was really sharp. And the Sveshnikov variation lives, still lives. And it's quite amazing despite the fact what Tigran Petrosyan said many years ago, that this is unacceptable. I mean, I should switch to e4 myself and show it to you how you should be playing against the system. It's not really so simple. Knight x on c6 makes no sense because black can choose between, I guess, b takes and maybe d5 next, or even d takes on c6 also is good. Takes, and the king always goes to c7. Even this looks good. So after e5, I think after knight f5 is the same. Yeah, d5. So the knight on f5 is going to be under attack. So the only way for white to play is knight b5. Threaten with knight d6 and threaten with d6. Now, what is quite interesting, if we still continue about the Sveshnikov system. So let me switch back, I mean, to this position, to this screen. Because, like I already mentioned, Sveshnikov released his book, The Sicilian Pelican, I think it was 1988, 1989. And he said, it's done. I mean, I've found every idea there is about this position. I mean, okay, maybe he was exaggerating because theory is still moving forward. But he said, that's it. I mean, that's it. I've discovered everything there is to discover in this position. So he started to pay attention to something else. So what he was doing after this? How can we improve this? He started to explore this move and the Kalashnikov. Yeah. And he said that, I mean, this is the new system I have to explore. And he started to play e5, and I think again I've played many games against Sveshnikov himself in the Kalashnikov. I clearly remember it. And again, the idea is quite similar. So after knight b5, d6, black wants to play a6, push away the knight. So knight c3, a6, here, and now black has a choice. He can play knight f6. He can play, I think it was knight c7 or knight g7. There's really a lot of exciting variations. For example, bishop g5, h6, bishop b5. What was the theory here? Takes, and rook a7. Okay, maybe I don't remember, because the big idea here is that the bishop cannot be taken because check. I mean, yeah, bishop e5 is not good, but it's just fun. It's just fun. So this knight g7 is sort of an attempt to improve of knight f6, because now after bishop g5, I think you can play... okay, this already showed. You can play h6, and there's no idea to double the pawns on f6. And he was, again, developing this variation. And also he played knight c to e7, with the idea that after c4, take on d5, and after e takes on d5, you probably already remember, Sveshnikov had this idea to sacrifice the pawn on b5, and this is exactly what he would do. I think he played something like knight f6, c takes, and bishop e7. Sacrificing the pawn at the queen side and short castle, and organize quite a serious activity at the king side. Yeah, maybe rook a4 block row. You know, I don't really remember. But I played myself a couple of times with white. Here, c takes on d5. And we used to play this number of times. So something like bishop e7. I don't remember, something like knight c2, bishop g5, traded, bishop d7, castle, takes, knight f6. Stuff like that. So this was my approach against Sveshnikov something like 15 years ago. I was still not a grandmaster at the time, and I was pretty happy with white to get this position. So indeed, Sveshnikov tried to employ this idea. And let me try to find more games about this. I think I have them. Let me try to find it. Just a second. For example, there's this game against Vasily Ivanchuk. Yeah, I think they play the Kalashnikov. So again, Sveshnikov played with black against Ivanchuk, who is, of course, a well-known chess legend. e5, there you go. They played this game in the year 2000. Good 21 years ago. Knight b5, d6. Here, yeah, bishop e3, quite tricky. Check this out. Ivanchuk was ready to waste the tempo after knight f6 and bishop g5, because he doesn't have the knight on c3, and after a6, he's ready to take it. Now queen f6 is impossible because of the fork, and after g takes, go here. And still, this was a very sharp game. So f5, very common idea. Knight e4, f takes, and again here we go. Some total craziness is happening at the board. So the white knight on d5 is under attack. Bishop c4, b5. There you go. So it's a complete mess. So white took on d4, b takes on c4, check, take, sacrifice the pawn. Nobody's counting the pawns here. Rook c6, bishop g7, and just like that, white is up a pawn. Yeah, white is up a pawn. Actually, two pawns, but black has very powerful bishops. So rook c4, f5, e4, and not easy. It's not easy for white to prove what exactly he has. So again, very common for the Sveshnikov was to sacrifice a pawn and then going for some kind of counterattack at the king side. So again, how did this happen? It starts with the Kalashnikov. Because this system is called as the Sicilian Kalashnikov. And there you go, we have some craziness happening here. And I know that sometimes it's dubbed as the Neo Sveshnikov, but I think in the common language it still bears the title of the Kalashnikov. And I think probably at some point I will do a bootcamp about the Sveshnikov system. Sveshnikov Kalashnikov system. I think I have to show some ideas, so this is just an introduction of Evgeny Sveshnikov's legacy, because he is pretty much the father of this line. He invented it together with his friend Gennady Timoshenko. And yeah, now it's super popular today. But this was not the only thing. This was not the only thing that Sveshnikov invented. He was also a big patron of the Sicilian Alapin. So what is Sicilian Alapin? Let me again remind you. Let me perhaps... Here we go. I'll tell you honestly. So again, Sicilian Alapin is e4, c5, and c3. I'll tell you honestly. From the start, I was never a fan of the Alapin. Never. Because I never liked it. So it really depends. But Sveshnikov devoted all of his life of promoting the Sicilian Alapin, promoting the Sicilian Sveshnikov, promoting the French advanced variation, and probably from all of the contributions, his work on the Sveshnikov system is the most famous one. Yeah, I don't like it myself, because why is that? I have an explanation for that. I'm myself a big fan of the anti-Sicilians. That's the reason. That is the reason. So I love bishop b5. The same applies for knight c6. I love bishop b5. And after e6, I promote g3. Yeah, because that's my approach. But anyway, I mean, Sveshnikov was widely regarded as one of the biggest experts in the world in the Sicilian Alapin. And yeah, let's check maybe this game, because d5 is one way to go, and the second way is to play knight f6. I think I have some games with g6. I've played against Sveshnikov myself as well. I think I can show you that game as well. But here, the typical idea after d5, queen d5, d4, again, white is creating an isolated queen's pawn structure. This is where Sveshnikov was really, really strong. So once you study the isolated queen's pawn structures, you can play against, you can use the same system against the Sicilians if your opponent plays the second move d5, or against the Karakan. So e4, c6, d4, d5, take on d5 and play c4. And there you go, you are again playing the isolated queen's pawn structure. So this game he played against Mark Taimanov. Knight a3, a very common idea for the Alapin. The knight goes to b5 to bother black with the fork on c7. And quite paradoxical. Yeah, this is quite paradoxical for the Alapin, because black gets a very good center. So he plays it like e5, knight f6, etc. But he's worse. He's worse because white organizes very quick activity at a queen set. So check out how he completely destroyed Taimanov here. So he played knight b5, queen h7, and bishop e3. And suddenly things are not so simple, because there might be bishop c5 threat with knight c7 fork. Not really easy decision. So Taimanov played b6 to stop this. Queen f3, attacking the knight, a long castle, and just like that, white has finished development of the queen side and is threatened to play knight d6 check. So here, black played rook d8, take, queen d1, and queen a4 is threatening. So knight c6, queen a4, knight a7 is threatening, and black is still behind the development. a6, and just knight f3. Sacrifice the knight on b5. Go for huge lead in development. So I guess 8x on b5, bishop b5, bishop b5, knight e5, bishop c6 looks just killing. Everything for black is just sleeping here. And after f6, Sveshnikov simply provoked his opponent. He played bishop b6, now threatened to play knight c7, black has to take the piece, and after bishop b5, Rookie Ivan, 94 already is killing. So there's a lot of threats. After 97, instead of 94, here Sveshnikov played bishop c4 and queen b5. And with so many pins, Taimanov had nothing better to do than to give up the piece and try to escape it. But he did not do it. So Sveshnikov confidently won this game, so he simply played king c2. On a side note, do I recommend d5 or knight f6? I think I had a bootcamp about the Sicilian Alapin. Just a second, let me think. Did I have a bootcamp about it? I think I did. How to combat the Sicilian Alapin. Yeah, and this was... I think I explained it, because I promote myself. Knight f6. This is what I play. So, this is what I played against Sveshnikov numerous times, and, you know, for me, and maybe for many other grandmasters, there was no greater joy. Try to outplay the biggest expert of the line in his pet line. It wasn't easy, but I mean, it always was a big pleasure. To my knowledge, I never outplayed, at least in the opening phase, Sveshnikov in the Sicilian Sveshnikov. Never. I never did it. So I always try to play something else. I always try to play Rossolimo, so I try to play something else. And then in later years, we played some Kalashnikov setups. But in the classical Sicilian Sveshnikov, I never outplayed him. Hello, everybody. Right. Maybe... Let me show you a couple of more games. So, for example, here's a game of Sveshnikov against Judith Polgar. And in his career, Evgeny Sveshnikov beat many strong players. And he was playing against many world champions. And if I remember correctly, he was quite happy that he has a positive score against former world champions. For example, against Mikhail Tal, he had an even score. I think so. What was it? 3 victories, 3 draws, and 3 victories, 3 losses, and many draws. And he was a big friend with Anatoly Karpov, because they were approximately the same age. So this game he played against Judith Polgar, who was still pretty young at the time, I think, 1993. And yeah, Polgar played d5, d4, and again the same idea, right? White voluntarily allows for black to create a weakness on d4, but this is still a central pawn. Knight c3, queen d8, bishop e3, knight e5, knight b4. Again, the biggest idea of the system, right? So black is going after the blockade on d5, and white is looking for some kind of a kingside attack at some point with bishop d3 and try to do something at the kingside. Here, queen b3, here, and black simply got outplayed. Karpov is from Chelyabinsk. You know, I don't really know that backstory. I know they were studying together, because I was reading, there was this amazing interview with Evgeny Sveshnikov when he was celebrating 60 years. And there was a special interview at Chess Pro. I could, by the way, throw a link if you want. Just a second. Let me try to find it. So it's in Russian. It's in Russian. Yeah, it's in Russian, but there's many amazing pictures. And Sveshnikov himself tells various interesting stories. Yeah, so I read the interview, of course, but I cannot really translate it. And he talks about many interesting historical events. So, but this interview was conducted when he was celebrating 60 years. So, but still, I guess when talking about history, nothing really changes, right? So that was pretty nice. About the G6 system. Yeah, this was quite interesting because I'm talking about this one. So this is my game. I was playing against Sveshnikov in 2011, and at the time, G6 was becoming quite a trendy move. I don't know, for whatever reason, people start to play G6 quite a lot. Yeah, but it's not really good. But it became trendy at the time, and we felt that, I mean, we have to do it. We have to do it. Yeah, so knight f3, bishop g7, d4, takes, d5. This was the idea. Now, this was the idea. Because black is inviting white to take on d5, and after something like knight f6, let's say white does something like knight c3, short castle, I don't know, something like bishop e2, knight e5. And the difference with the typical isolated queen's pawn structure is that the black has the bishop already on g7. So for white, it's not really so easy to organize an offensive at the king side, plus the bishop on g7 is targeting the pawn on d4. So that's at least the idea. That's at least the idea of the Surly bishop g7. But of course, white is not obliged to do it, and yeah, Placro, I don't really remember the line. I mean, I stopped playing it 10 years ago. I'll tell you honestly, I mean, we did play it a number of times. Yeah, but I never came back to it. So this bishop on g7 is not really good. And again, check out what I really admired about Sveshnikov is that he had a clear vision in which direction he takes his openings, because he always gets more or less the same position, the same structure, the structure which he really knows well. For example, I'm looking at this position, it really feels like the advanced French, right? And again, the same applies for the Sicilian Alapin. He was a big fan of the isolated queen's pawn structure. Against the Karakan, it was again the same isolated queen's pawn structure. So he was developing his own systems, and he was a big expert in them. Yeah, here, this game, how did we play it, by the way? It was a draw. It was a draw, yeah. So I tried to organize some kind of an activity here at the pawn on d4. And after a very interesting game, the game finished in a draw. I'm not going to show it to all of you, because maybe it's not really so relevant. But yeah, this g6 setup was super popular at some time ago. And again, Sveshnikov has published at least one good book on the Sicilian Alapin. Maybe I can show to you. Maybe I can show to you this game. So now that I started to show my games against Sveshnikov, we played this game in the year 2012. At the time, I had just become a Grandmaster, I think. I had just become a Grandmaster because I got it pretty late. I think at an age 29. And Sveshnikov already was aging at the time. So I felt I'm obliged to outplay him because I was very ambitious. I was very just trying to beat him with any color, white, black, whatsoever. And as you see, I was a small ELO favorite at the time. So that will explain why I played what I played. So he played the Alapin. I played knight f6. This is our first encounter, I think, in the Latvian Championships. d4, takes, knight c6. Now, this is not something I recommend today. This is what I played those years ago. After knight c3, takes, d6, f4. If I remember correctly, I had no real knowledge about the system, but I was still feeling super confident that I should beat him. So I played g6, here, and bishop g4. With the idea that after h3, takes, I sacrifice a piece. And I still remember, we were playing this in the old Riga. And I sacrificed a piece. He was like, what? What is this? And at the time, I thought, when I was playing the game, that I pleasantly surprised him. As a matter of fact, it's a silly sacrifice. And this is something which I didn't understand it. Because after take on d4, queen d4, now that's an attack, right? Of course I saw bishop e3. But the funny thing is that after queen e5, I thought, I'm good. I thought this is a great position for me. Now, after the game, I realized I made a horrible positional decision. Because apparently there was something which I was not understanding correctly. I thought 3 pawns for the piece, a healthy structure, etc. But possibility to organize pass pawns to the center with f5, e5, e4. It's gonna give me a great game. He just slaughtered me here completely. So he played rook c1. Just played normal moves, bishop a6. Around here, I started to suspect something is wrong. I mean, this was not supposed to happen, right? I mean, he had this big idea that I'm gonna have those very powerful 3 pawns and I'm gonna outplay this guy and I'm almighty at whatnot. And he just continued to improve the position, simplified it, threaded the queens, and yeah, very lovely bishop c8, by the way. So bishop c8, pushing away the rook. And rook c7 is incoming. So I kept fighting as a lion, but didn't make it. And after the game, I simply realized I was overly ambitious with my approach. That you cannot play like that. You cannot sacrifice a piece for 3 pawns. And this was something which I just didn't understand it at the time. So he confidently outplayed me and collected 1 pawn after another, and about here I simply resigned. Yeah, I realized, okay, you cannot do it. The funny thing is, I lost this game in the Latvian Championships, and we met again. Something like 11 days later. Okay, I'm gonna now slightly switch the topic because this is not gonna be Alapin. And again, we're playing against each other, this time Latvian Team Championships. Again, I'm playing with black. Again, I'm Sveshnikov. And I'm thinking like this, just a second. I'm gonna show you now. I remember I lost to you 11 days ago. I have to outplay you, right? So here we go again. He plays e4. I want some vengeance here. So I play c5, f4. Now, this is what surprised me here, because I felt you couldn't play like this. I felt pretty much confident in this line. Yeah, by the way, Sveshnikov, he has published a book on the Grand Prix. I didn't know it at the time. It's not really Grand Prix. Again, here we go. You can see the Grand Prix attack is one of the books by Evgeny Sveshnikov. I didn't know it. Of course I didn't know it. So I played e5. Yeah, I did. Yeah, d5, knight f6. And I knew the line really well. I knew it really well. So I was like, again, I'm just gonna beat him here. So he played bishop b5. Take, c4. All of this is theory. All of this is theory. e6, takes, Queen e2, knight c6 takes. I'm sorry, knight c3. Long castle was already too ambitious. But again, I think it's important to understand this context. That I felt that I'm obliged to fight back. I'm obliged to show my status, that I'm one of the newest grandmasters at the moment in Latvia, and I just have to outplay him. So he took an e6. e5 is very typical idea. f5 is again very typical idea to sacrifice the pawn on f5, and white is trying to play something like knight g5, knight e4. After knight b4, knight e3, I went for a very spectacular looking attack. It didn't work. So after knight e4, bishop c7, I realized I have no compensation. So white simply kept the pawn, and Sveshnikov was a very good defender. He simply kept the pawn, continued to improve the position. Around here I thought, there we go again, there we go again. So the position simplified. I was already begging for the draw, and he just outplayed me. Slowly but carefully, improve the position, improve the position. And after a long, heroic battle, I resigned. So that was my second loss in 11 days, and I remembered it for many years, is that I donated to him something like 11 rating points in 11 days. But I mean, he was a very, very tough opponent, although at the time I was a small ELO favorite, and Evgeny was aging at the time. He was a very difficult opponent for me, and I would remember this later. I would try to outplay him anyway, so there were quite a few draws between us, so we tried to outplay each other. So as you see, I had some spectacular losses against Sveshnikov early on. Right. Also, I have to mention, I'm gonna of course continue with my games against Sveshnikov as well. But I also want to mention is that among all of the contributions to chess and theory, Sveshnikov also had done serious work on the advanced French variation. So what is the advanced French variation? It is e4, just a second, maybe, yeah. Maybe let me select the game. Yeah, so the advanced French variation is e4, e6, d4, d5, and e5. Yeah, so he was really advocating this line. So for example, this game is against Evgeny Bareev, and knight f3. So, for example, this game against Bareev, knight h6, d takes on c5 is another typical idea for white. And Bareev made a mistake, knight g4, which normally would be a good move because black is threatened to win the pawn on e5 and not to take the pawn on c5. But now after queen a4, surprise move, black cannot take on e5. And the knight on g4 is under attack. So after h5, h3, black had to make the sad move, go back. And after bishop e3, knight f5, bishop d4, now I can tell you this, is that Sveshnikov knows how to keep the extra pawns. So I played numerous games, positionally sacrificing pawns. He was always keeping them, never giving back anything. So he saw a pawn, he took the pawn, that's it. And he managed to solidify the position, and black has simply nothing to show for it. So this is why he tried to play something like g5, rook h6, super creative, something tried to change the character of the game, but it was just not meant to be. g4, knight e1, white is super solid, there's no funny business here. And Sveshnikov was a very good player when it came to using the weaknesses to his advantage. So he really felt good where to position his pieces, how to outmaneuver his opponent, how to solidify the position. And maybe he was not really the sharpest player in terms of super beautiful combinations. He was a very, very nice and fine positional player. Yeah, and he outplayed Barev here. H takes, king b1, rook h1, slowly but gradually improving the position, and black is not even thinking about winning back the pawn. Queen d4, already threatened with c6, and soon after this, Sveshnikov won his game. For example, there's another game against Jan Timman, also quite a famous player in the 80s and 90s. So e4, e6, d4, d5, e5. The same idea again, knight f3, queen b6, a3. Yeah, so Sveshnikov was a big fan of the system. So white is threatening to play b4. And after c4, knight e2. I think black has to stop the idea of pushing b3 knight a5, if I remember correctly. This is where the modern theory stands here. After something like knight a5, there's either bishop e2 or g3. But here black played bishop d7, allowed to play b3, knight b3, and now white's pawn structure is showing the direction that white is gonna attack at the king side. So c3d for e5, this is what I call a spear, which shows you the direction in which white should conduct his game. So knight a5 was played, takes, bishop d2, the pawn on a3 sometimes can be sacrificed, queen a4, of course white is not going to trade queens, and bishop d3. This is a dream French position for white. So there's going to be moves like short castle, h4, knight g5, maybe f4, f5, a very easy initiative at the king side. So Timman tried to play something like knight e7, h6, and here Sveshnikov changed his approach. He played rook c1, knight c8. Now black's idea was to play knight b6, knight c4 at a long castle, but all of this comes too slow. Here, white opens the position, take, and after queen b5, it's not really difficult, takes, and black's position simply collapsed. So okay, maybe Timman didn't play his best game, but all of this started with a very good positional concept in the opening. Knight f3, knight c6, knight f3, queen b6, a3, c4, I believe is, to my knowledge, the main move here. I think there were some other moves like knight g7. What was it here? I try to remember. Was it like this? b4, I don't play this line myself. Takes, knight f5. There's either bishop e3 or bishop b2. And I think g4. Again, very thematic idea. And black is at some point thinking to play knight a5 and knight c4 because the bishop on b2 is under attack. I have played myself the advanced French variation in my childhood. Never again really, because I didn't really feel it. But still, Evgeny Sveshnikov found this to be perhaps positionally the best idea, and he was really pursuing it and even published a book about the system. Queen b4 instead of rook c1. Queen b4? Where's queen b4? You mean here? Where's queen b4? Not sure where's queen b4 really. All right. Now, there's two more games. No, there's three more games I want to show to you. Now, two of them, I mean all of them actually, all three of them are quite special. Because for every single game there is a story. And you know, when chess.com was writing this article about Sveshnikov, not sure if you have read it, because I think you can read it here. I was called by Peter Duggars, and he was asking some questions about Sveshnikov's past. Do I remember some interesting stories about him? So stuff I told didn't appear in the interview, unfortunately. I didn't really know much about his past. I know our games, but I remember that we played for the first time, and I told it to Peter Duggars. We played for the first time against Sveshnikov, either in 1996 or 1997, in an international tournament in Riga. And he said, I'm unable to find it because the first our game, at least in the database, is dated by 2004. And I had to check it. I had to check it because I clearly remember I was playing against Sveshnikov when I was a kid. And I found it. I found it. I still keep notes. I still keep notes, by the way. Not sure if you can see it. We played our first game in 1998. 1998. 9th October. So I was not 13 or 14 years old. I was 15. I found the game, so I can show it to you. I don't remember if this was my very first game against the Grandmaster. I think it might be a classical game, the first classical game against the Grandmaster. I'm not really sure. I have to check it. I think so. This was the first game against the Grandmaster. I would like to believe so, but maybe I played against the Grandmaster before. I don't really remember. So I'm gonna show you the game. I was 15 years old, and we played in an international tournament in Riga, Maestro 98. And you know what's the sad part? It doesn't exist anywhere online. I checked. Google, cannot find it. There's no games in database. There's nothing. There's nothing. I mean, it's like this tournament didn't exist. But I still remember. Playing in it. And I had a very good memory of Sveshnikov wearing the red jacket. Because here, I think you can see it. I'm not sure if this is the same jacket. Probably not. But one of the nicest things that Sveshnikov would ever do, he was always very gallant. He was always wearing a suit. I don't think I ever saw him in a serious tournament in like a t-shirt. So he had a very strict rule that you should always in a tournament look like a professional, look like a gentleman. And I still have the biggest respect for him for that. He was like a true example of a chess professional. And this game, I'm gonna show it to you. So I was 15 at the time, and I had the biggest respect. I had the biggest respect for him because I don't think he was still playing for the Latvian team in 1998. There was this big international tournament. I don't remember the venue, to be honest, because I had just played in the World Youth Championships under 16. And there's this funny story that I was very happy to get my first rating, my first ELO rating, 2230, 2230. I was so excited. And then I played in this next tournament, this Maestro 98. I don't remember for who was the Maestro. Maybe it was Mikhail Stahl's memorial tournament. But I played for a performance 23-15. I think so. Something like this, so that was quite funny. Anyway. So I was playing with black. So I was ready. Oh, wait. No. I was already rated 2350. Okay, I don't remember really. When did I get the rating? And I was a big fan of the Petrov at the time. I was playing it consistently. E5, Queen D4. Now this was the favorite approach by Sveshnikov against the Petrov. And we played after this game some years later several times the system. D5 and knight D6. And again, this is something which I don't think is so popular today. I don't think I've seen some high-level games in this line. I mean, Petrov itself is not really so popular. Here, knight of... I'm sorry, yeah, I think knight f5 is the main move, which I think I discovered after the game. I mean, I didn't know it really so well. So I played g6, with the idea to play bishop g7, short castle, and have a good game. Queen e2 instead of queen d4. Yeah, maybe. I don't remember really. Maybe there's bishop b4 check. I don't remember. Or maybe knight c5, knight e4, knight c6. To be honest, it's been some years when I checked this line, so I don't play this anymore. I simply don't play it. So I used to play Petrov at the time, and bishop b5, I think I was surprised about this move. Here. Here. Takes, takes, and knight g5. Now this is what he played, and slowly, but carefully, white got the better position. And here I went for some craziness. I should have simply taken knight e6 and simply had a slightly worse pawn structure. So after something like knight e6, short castle, bishop d2, I guess I'm still very active here. But I decided to take on e2. And after take, black is down a pawn again, and Sveshnikov never gave it away. And this was my very first experience. I thought I'm gonna have some kind of activity here. He never gave it back. So he was very good at consolidating his position. I thought I'm super active here, there's some ideas, but after long castle and c3, I realized I have nothing. I'm simply down a pawn. So I kept playing it, traded some pieces. You know what is quite funny? So we got to the rook endgame, and at the time I thought I'm leading a very heroic defense. Because I'm playing with this very strong grandmaster, and I got to the rook endgame, just down a pawn. And I thought, I'm really fighting here like a lion. So I traded one pawn. By the way, b4 is an amazing move to imprison the rook. I traded one pawn, I traded the second pawn, and I thought I should be close to draw, right? Close to draw somewhere. And about here, I realized I'm in a tsuksun. I have no moves. I mean, my rook is completely shut out. So rook e5 is rook e4, and yeah, so I just had to try something. I gave a check. He went back. I just played f3 and c6. So I resigned. But I thought I really had a huge fight. I had a huge fight against the #1 seed in the tournament, and looking with today's eyes on the game, I was simply outplayed, without a chance. So I played an interesting opening. He collected a pawn, and this, by the way, occurred many times before. He took a pawn and never gave it back. So he was a big master when it came to keeping the extra pawn, simplifying the position, and then converting it. So probably if you would be looking for somebody who is a big expert when it comes to keeping the extra pawns, study Sveshnikov's games. So he definitely knew how to do it. Kochner style. So maybe I think it's the old generation style. They're just very nice compact positional players who, if they take something, they're never giving it back, just like that. So this was my first game against Evgeny Sveshnikov. You know, there's also this story I forgot to tell you, is that I know also Sveshnikov's oldest son, Vladimir, very well, because he is a few years younger than me. I think 3 years younger. There's this story, I'm not sure if Vladimir remembers it. We played for the first time against each other in 1994. I tried to find a game. Unfortunately, I could not find it. I think it exists somewhere. I have some notes. So we had this Latvian championships for kids under 12, I think. So I was 11 at the time. I was only second degree in chess. I mean, how do you call it? Not sure if there's such a title in Western society. In Russian and the post-Soviet school, there's this fourth degree, third degree, second degree, first degree, and then there's the candidate master, there's the master, there's the international master, grandmaster. So I was the second degree. Yeah, so I don't know how to translate it in English really. So sports degree, whatever. So I was the second degree. So I thought I'm pretty good. I was 11 at the time, and I was playing against Class A, maybe classes. Yeah, maybe Class A, Class B. I don't know really. And I was just completely nobody at the time. So I was just started to play chess. I was doing it for fun. I love chess. And I was playing chess for a good 2 years. So I was the second class, whatever. And there's this guy, a smaller guy than me, some Sveshnikov, Vladimir Sveshnikov. And he already had the first class, the first degree. And he was younger than me. And I remember he played the Kalashnikov system. Yeah, I think so. It was either the Kalashnikov or it was the Sveshnikov system. And it was in 1994, and I had no clue who is this guy, who is his father. I mean, I didn't care really because I was just playing some chess. So my first game against Vladimir, his son, Evgeny's son, Vladimir Sveshnikov, was in 1994. I beat him, and I got my first degree after the tournament. And yeah, so that's my first memory. And then some years later, in 1998, I was playing against his dad. Yeah, so that's quite an amazing story. Unfortunately, I cannot show you that game because I don't know where it exists somewhere in my notes, but I just couldn't find it. And of course, some years later, we would play many games against Vladimir. He would become my teammate in the Latvian national team. Now he is a very strong international master. Maybe I hope he'll become a grandmaster himself as well. All right, now that is the side story. Of course, we are talking here about Evgeny Sveshnikov, but still, many of his works, authoring works, were done together with Vladimir, who is also a very strong theoretician. Now, the second game, which has a very good memories for me, is this game we played in, let me find it, 2011. Yeah, maybe this is why I was feeling so confident in that game I showed to you where I sacrificed a piece for 3 pawns because this was the year before. I was feeling so cocky. I'm gonna outplay him now every single game. So this game we played in 2011 Latvian Championships, and this was my second Latvian Championship title. At the time, I was semi-professional at the time because I had just started to work as a head coach in Riga chess school. I still was not a grandmaster. We're playing in this Latvian small campus, the city called Mežezers, quite a traditional tournament, and at the time it was called the Latvian Championships because it's quite unofficial tournament at the time. So I was playing with black. C5. I tell you honestly, I didn't know nothing about the system. I invented this line over the board. So I played C5, Bishop C5, Knight C6, D5. I was just trying to improvise at the opening. So we got about the equal position. Nothing really is happening here. Knight E4, B5. Yeah, Knight E4 I guess was not a good move. Takes. And the problem is, I'm forced to take with the G pawn. Yeah, it's some nimzo. Some sort of a nimzo. So Bishop D3, he attacked my pawn, and there you go. There's some fun starting. Knight takes on B4. That's a discovered attack. Take. Queen E2. So he is ready to trade the bishop on H7 for the knight on B4. So I play Knight E5, threaten with a fork, Bishop E1, Knight C3, Queen D3. So I could take the rook. Right there's gonna be mate. So I play a rook H8. Ah, by the way, by the way, I have to mention the bishop on D7 is also under attack. Super tricky. I mean, this is super tricky, especially when you see from afar. When you go for this line, bishop again. All of this started here. All of this started here. You have to see all of this from afar. So Knight E4 takes. Now there's a pin. Bishop D3 seems to be necessary. Discovered attack. Queen goes away. Here. Very deep calculation. Now this is again threatened with a mate or Queen D7. Rook H8. Yeah, don't spoil it. Don't spoil it. So Queen D7, I thought I'm gonna play Knight E1. Queen D1, takes, and Rook C3. I thought, okay, this is fun. I mean, I should be doing okay because I have very strong pass pawns on the queen side. So I evaluated this to be good, despite the fact that white has two light pieces. So he played Rook D2. Queen C7, and I made a little trap. This, up to my date, remains probably the most beautiful game against Sveshnikov, so I just got to show it. I mean, of course, maybe for Sveshnikov's best games, it doesn't really qualify, but it qualified for me. Yeah, I played Queen C7, and I remember he was like, where's the big idea? I'm taking the bishop here. Check. You cannot take it. And specifically with the queen, not with the rook. No, he took it. Queen takes an H2. I was like, oh, Christmas is early here. So sack faced, and he resigned. Because after takes, here, that's a mate. Yeah, so, I mean, okay, it's pretty basic combination, but it's one of the nicest memories I have, at least from those times. And I still think it was quite a decent trap. And you shouldn't have fallen into this, because I guess you simply asked the question, why my opponent is giving up. Yeah, it was weird, Kiki. It was indeed very weird. So whatever. I mean, maybe he was too relaxed or something, but still, this is for me very nice memories that I was able to beat him. And I think this was the first time I beat Sveshnikov in a classical game. I think so. So I was not yet a grandmaster at the time, so for me this was very special, of course, and I managed to win the entire championship after the game with this little combination. Yeah, and finally, I have to show the final game. The final game is gonna be a little sentimental. Because we played it in Saaremaa this year. So the story is that we are driving together to Saaremaa Chess Festival in Estonia. So of course during the COVID times, many tournaments were not played, and we're looking towards any tournaments to play. And there is this tournament in Saaremaa, which is Estonia. There's an island, not very far from the mainland of Estonia, and from June, I don't remember, June 4 to 6, 3rd to 5, I don't remember what third. At the beginning of June, Estonia had just lifted a lot of restrictions of organizing tournaments, and I decided to go. I wanted to go, really. There's good prizes, everything. I just want to get out, just play some chess. I mean, streaming is fun, right? But you still need to physically feel the pieces and play something. And I think we went together with another Latvian grandmaster, Normons Miezis, there together, because we have to take a ferry, load the car in the ferry, and thus get to the island. But going back, we're driving back with Evgeny Sveshnikov, and he was driving the car, and we talked a lot about I mean, chess, about life, etc. We talk about also COVID, etc. And yeah, so that's quite unfortunate. I mean, not unfortunate. Just sad that 2 months later he was gone. So this is the final game. This is the final game I played against Evgeny Sveshnikov. Saaremaa. And I believe in the article of chess.com, you can see the picture from the tournament, because this is what I gave to Peter Doggers from the tournament archives. So it's gonna be Alapin. It's gonna be Alapin, and it was always a big pleasure for me to fight against Sveshnikov with one of his beloved lines. So I played obviously knight f6, because this is what I believe how you should play it. e5, knight e5. And I believe that Sveshnikov perfectly knew that you have to postpone the decision to play d4. I think he really knew it very well, because I think the most dangerous system here for white is to play bishop c4. So bishop c4, knight b6, bishop b3, and postponing the decision to develop the knight. And this is what I talked about in the bootcamp of the Sicilian Alapin. I believe so. I mentioned this. Anyway, he played knight f3, so I was advocating for early d6. The idea is to fight for the center, bishop c4, knight b6, bishop b3 and c4. All of this is in the bootcamp, how to play against Sicilian Alapin. Yeah. Hello everybody who just joined us. So d takes, knight e5, queen d5. This is the double attack. And if you have studied the bootcamp, you'll remember this line of queen e2, f6 and queen h5. What can I do it? So there's some crazy lines after takes, check. Otherwise it's simply losing. Yeah, he gonna do it. So I knew all of this, of course, because I had studied it before. So after queen d5, he played knight f3. And here's the idea, queen e6. And to my knowledge, this is my idea, because I was first playing this line against Alyosha Feuerstack. I think he is a German international master, and I employed this idea first to trade the queens, so that after the queen trade I can play e5, and I'm quite happy about this position. And a very similar setup against Evgeny I played a number of times. So bishop e4, f6. The idea is to exclude the knight on f3 from the game. So bishop e3, bishop e6, b3, knight e5. And I was really feeling that this is an excellent position to get off an opening. I have no weaknesses, I have the center, and I have nothing to complain about. So I was really looking already for ways to claim an advantage here after the opening. So now I'm about to get 2 bishop advantage. So he played, I'm sorry, oh, sorry. So he played c4. Take. Bishop e4. Yeah, this is quite tricky because I realized that he wants to play knight c3 and knight e5. So I had a very deep idea, and I was pretty proud that I managed to find it in a rapid game. Yeah, I played bishop b4, stopping knight c3, but the big idea is to provoke a3 first. After bishop e7, knight c3, now I play knight a5. Now the pawn on b3 is under attack. There's no rook b1. I can just take it. I think so, at least. Not really sure. Oh, wait, there's knight b3. Rook b1, knight b3, bishop c4. So you can do it. Yeah, I think I simply forgot it. That's because the pawn stands on a3. Again, I provoked white to play a3. Now here, and now knight a5. And the big idea here was that after bishop d5, there's a positional exchange sacrifice. Rook b1, knight a5, knight c7, king d7, takes. So white has the exchange for the pawn, but a difficult to play position. So for rapid, I think this was a great position, a great choice. So I'm not really sure why he gave up the second pawn. There was no need to do it. I guess he miscalculated something. And I managed to consolidate my position. So there's 2 pawns for the exchange. So he was pressing and trying to somehow crash through. But ultimately, it should have already led to a position where after knight takes on d6, I have 3 pawns for the sacrificed exchange. But he maybe has some chances to call this, because he is still quite active, and my pieces are quite tied. I cannot move with the knight, because rook takes on b7 is a problem. But I decided to include king e6 for whatever reason. I thought I need to activate my king first. And after rook e8 check, I simply missed rook e7. And the game starts from scratch. Now king e7 is going to be rook b7. And black is suddenly very active. So after some tricky checks, white is threatening to play e8 check and take on g7. I figured that only chance to play this for the win is to play king e8. Here. And the a pawn is marching forward. So white has no choice but to trade it. And now the question is, can black win this? Probably it's a draw. Yeah, maybe I showed it. Maybe I showed this game right after the tournament. So I was trying to create some passed pawns here and there, and eventually he made a mistake. Yeah, still it's quite unpleasant, but we're playing on seconds and he made some mistakes here. I lost a pawn. Lost a third pawn, and then in time trouble, already in a losing position, he blundered the rook. So this is my final game. We played against Evgeny Sveshnikov. This was the beginning of June, and as you know, on 18th August, that was a big shock to all of the Latvian chess society. Unfortunately, Evgeny passed away at age of 71. Yeah, so it's quite incredible that the time span of our games. I played my first game against Evgeny Sveshnikov in 1998. So 23 years difference between the games. I played many games against him, and as a person, he was very kind. I don't think we actually ever had any what do you call it, disagreements, because he was very well known about his very strict stance when it comes to copyrights in chess. And probably you know this story, right? Thank you, Wes. Thank you, John. And he was very strict. And we had this discussion a couple of times. For example, I mean, we were driving in the bus from a European Team Championships of 2011. Now I remember this. And we just played the European Team Chess Championships in Greece. Halkidiki, I think. I played perfectly there. I got my final GM norm, and Evgeny was playing in the team. And we were driving with a bus from, I don't remember, was it from Thessaloniki to Athens, or from Halkidiki to Thessaloniki, whatever. I mean, I don't know the geography of Greece so well. But we were driving with the bus for a couple of hours. And I'm sitting in front with Evgeny, and all the national team is there. We're driving, and we start to talk about the copyrights. I was like, okay, here we go. And he was really a big advocate of that every player should get some kind of a royalty when it comes to giving up the games. In terms of, let's say, I just played this game against Evgeny Sveshnikov. This means if a site wants to use it, or for example, sell it, like, I don't know, ChessBase or any other site, maybe Chess.com, whatever, like, then you need to pay something to the authors, because we are the creators of the game. And we argued about this, I remember. I mean, in the early years, I used to argue a lot. I mean, on the friendly level, but I said, I mean, come on, this is too late already. You cannot do this anymore, because this is a brilliant idea. I support it, but the train is gone. I said, no, it's the time. Now it's the time. And he was very strict about it. And I just stopped to talk about this topic. So there was like, we're driving in the bus, and he starts to talk about copyright. I don't remember who started it. I was just, okay, here we go again. I'm not going to talk about this anymore. But I had the biggest respect for his stance, that he believes in this and he's going to go until the end. Although we were like half smiling about when the topic would ever come up again about the copyrights. And I think we managed to agree that a nice solution would be publishing the games without the names. Because, I mean, okay, obviously this train already is long gone, but you could publish the games, but not publishing the names. Because now it's so easy to prepare against a player, it costs nothing, right? So for example, I play all of these games, let's say, for example, Title Tuesday, right? I play all these games in Title Tuesday, and now they appear in ChessBase. So I can play some brilliant idea, and everyone who has access to the database or ChessBase database, they just go online, they download the latest update, and all of the games are there. So maybe indeed, one way in an ideal world to solve it would be to remove the names, because you can see the ideas, what has been played, but not who played it. I don't know, I mean, it's quite a futuristic world, I guess. It's never gonna happen. But for example, if I wanted to study a certain opening, I could get the position, I could get the lines, but I would never see who is playing it. It's never happening anyway. Not sure if you understand my point, but the point is, now it's so easy to prepare against every single opponent. Right, so for example, I want to prepare against Evgeny Sveshnikov, I open ChessBase, and there go brrr, huge statistics, what's hot, what's not hot, what he plays now, what he played 5 years ago. So easy to prepare. Yeah. But anyway, I mean, that was... He was actually suing. He was suing some institutions about this. And So the copyrights, trying to copyright the games, it's been a topic, but I don't think it's ever gonna happen. I mean, I believe so. The train is gone. It's long gone. But he was indeed very strict when it came about this.